Welcome to Messengers of Christ, Bruce. I'm happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So, of course, first I'm going to ask you of your testimony. How did Jesus really change your life?
Wow, in so many ways it's hard to describe, but I grew up in a large family. I had five sisters, no brothers. So I was the only boy, and we grew up with a lot of abuse, physical and verbal abuse as kids. Me and my sisters, and so I got the idea that I was kind of defective and worthless, and you know, useless as a matter of fact, and hopeless. So I turned to drugs and alcohol to for comfort, to because I didn't like the way I felt. So I wanted to change the way I felt. And I know the first time I drank, it made me feel it made me feel better. It made me forget about the parts about me that I didn't like. And then so that moved on because it worked. I actually started with food first. Food was probably my first comfort, and then drugs and alcohol and pornography that also joined in there. And I was living that lifestyle into my 30s, and then I went into a program in 1990. I went into a program called Project 90. It's a men's program, 90-day program, and so I did that, and I was so broken at that point. I wanted something to change, and so I went in this program and did everything they said. And of course, they recommend the 12 steps of recovery, the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 steps. And so when you're in the program, they run you through the first three steps, which is admitting you're powerless over your addiction and that your life is unmanageable. Two is came to believe a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. And that's where I was a little stuck because the God thing. Um, I was brought up Catholic as a kid, and we were made to go to church. And the funny thing is, the whole time I was in church, I never really heard the gospel. Although I went to church for catechism and all these other things. Maybe I didn't listen. I don't know. But anyway, so that was a sticking point for me because um, when I got old enough, I decided I'm not going to go to church anymore. But then, of course, my life got really bad. So I went to this program, and I just said, you know what, I'm willing to do anything. And these other people told me, you just have to have a little concept of God or a little belief to start this. And then the third step is made a decision to turn your will and your lives over to the care of God. And I did that to the best of my ability. And so finally, I was at the end of myself. In 2003, and I was asked some guy to be my sponsor who happened to go to PBC, and he invited me to the Life Recovery Bible study that they had, and I was like, I really, because he was talking about Jesus, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with that, because I always thought, people that believed in Jesus were strange people, weird people, Of course, now I'm one of them, so I guess I'm a weird person now. Um, but so I came to the Bible study, and I told myself that if this, I'm going to go. I had an open mind. I wanted my life back. I wanted to be clean and sober, and so I went to this because he invited me to the Bible study, and I went in there, and it was people just like me struggling to figure out what life is about, and trying to stay sober, and so I started. That was back in 2003, and come come to find out that my sister had gone to PBC before I ever even knew about PBC, and she was a Christian, and I didn't understand it. I was kind of like, okay, whatever, whatever floats your boat, sister. If you want to do that Jesus thing, that's fine. Um, but turns out that she was married by one of the old pastors at PBC, Ron Ritchie. Um, and when I was in jail at the time, when she got married, so I didn't even know. But here's the thing: is that the people from PBC were praying for me even before I knew there was a PBC, right? Because my sister was praying for me and having people at PBC pray for me. So I ended up in the same church that was praying for me for who knows how many years. So at that point, when they started, R&R started right around that time. If you don't know what R&R, it's a Friday night outreach we do. It's called R&R Recovery and Renewal. And it's an outreach to people in recovery from various addictions. And so I showed up there 2003, pretty hopeless, helpless. And I just started going. And I felt like there's something about R&R where I felt like I really belonged to somewhere for the first time in my life. And, even though it was a recovery thing, it was, the first time I walked in I felt like I was at home and I belonged there.
I want to ask you, was there one point where just everything hit you and then you started really becoming into the Christian life?
So back in 2003, when I started at PBC, it was, I believe, 2004, Easter was coming up and they were going to have a baptism at PBC. And so I was asking Pastor Andy, I go, I think I want to do this, but, I don't know if I'm really ready. And so he kind of gave me some, told me what baptism was about, to pray about it. And I didn't want to wait. So I said, you know what, I want to do it. And so we got, they had, the baptismal they have now, it's a pretty sturdy one. Well, the one before was like one of those ones when your kids you make, and it was about 3 feet high, and and there was I think about 12 to 15 of us getting baptized that day in the center courtyard. And of course they had to get another guy in there because I'm a big guy to be able to pick me back up out of the water. And so we kept going, a bunch of people getting baptized, stepping over the side of the thing. And right towards the end, the baptismals collapsed and just flooded everybody's feet. All the water just went and soaked everybody's feet right there. So the reason I say that is because it should have been kind of a sign of what was about to happen. And so I got baptized. And then at that point, 2 weeks later, I was living with my sister and brother-in-law. I went out on the worst drug and alcohol binge I ever did the whole time. And so I stayed in hotels for like 3 months straight in a hotel. And the only people that I saw for those 3 months I saw no family. The only one I saw was the drug dealer, the liquor store attendant, and the hotel people when I paid like a month at a time. So during that 3 months, I actually wanted to kill myself, and I was going to kill myself. I was planning to kill myself, but I was too scared to. I couldn't. My logic was, okay, why would I kill myself if I still have money? So let me finish using all my money up, then I'll kill myself. And then I ran out of money and I hadn't killed myself, so I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. I know I'm laughing about it, but it was very serious. But I didn't know how to live. I was too scared to live, but I was too scared to kill myself at the same time. So I was stuck right in the middle. A really, really hard place to be. There's a saying they say in recovery, which they call incomprehensible demoralization. It means that, you feel worse than you could possibly ever imagine. And so after 3 months, I hadn't killed myself. And I said, okay, let me call my mother and see if she'd let me come and stay with her. And so I called her and she let me come and stay with her for a while. And I haven't took a drink or drugs since that day. I'd like to say everything was cleaned up at the same time. Took a couple of years before God took away the pornography as well, which was also a really big struggle. But I would say that 3 months was necessary when I look back on it, because when I got baptized, I was not quite at the end of myself. And I think there was still some part of me that thought I could control this or handle life. And it wasn't true. So I got to the realization that, you know what, God, there's nothing I can do here to make my life better. Only you can do it. And so that I would say was the changing. That was the part that really did it, where I was so broken, and I completely surrendered, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, uh, I had started to pursue a stand-up comedy career, and I did that for about 3.5 years. This was right around the time when a little bit after I came to PBC, started doing that on a regular basis, and so at some point, um, I was being discipled by one of the elders at PBC, and in a men's discipleship group. And I remember I invited them to one of my shows. And the thing about the comedy world, there's a lot of really dirty, foul-mouthed people that are too comedy. But I had dedicated myself to doing clean comedy. So I'm in this. So I started doing that, and then one day I just had a really bad experience, and I realized that this wasn't what God wanted me to do. My motive for it was to be known, liked, loved, admired, all that kind of stuff. And so, finally God got his message, got through to me, and I stopped doing it. And then I really poured myself into the recovery ministry, volunteering in various ways. I've done everything in the recovery ministry, from greeting people at the door, to setting up chairs, to hosting the meetings, to speaking at the meetings, and then I became the recovery director in 2018. And so I would say that through my serving others, and just really having a purpose in my life, serving others, helping others to overcome what I've overcome, has been a real blessing in my life. And so I ended up being the recovery director in 2018, and then I came on as the pastor in February of this year, because I was under Andy Burnham, who was the recovery pastor for I think maybe 15 years or something like that. I don't remember how many years, but I was, kind of under him, just learning from him, and being part of the ministry. And then when I was the director, I was kind of his assistant, and it's been a great thing. Here's the thing. Okay. So the very ministry that helped save my life, I am now the pastor of. And so if that isn't a testimony to God's life-changing ways, there isn't. Put it this way: when I look at the man in the mirror that I see looking back at me, is not the same man that came into PBC back in 2003. And I've been part of the internship at PBC, and I've been mentored by, I don't know, 5 or 6 different men and women of PBC. And I've learned that that in order for me to grow into the person that these people have become, I have to learn from them, and I have to listen to them. And I'm a very independent kind of person. And I think most of us are, right? That's our problem. So we want to be our own gods. And when I was my own God, my kingdom was in ruins, right? And so now that my Father is the God in heaven, the creator of the universe, it's a lot less pressure, and I never want to be the God of my life again, because it'll just be in ruins again, So,
Yeah, you must build our life on solid rock, which
there
is
you go. There
God,
you go.
and not rely on our own understanding. So, yeah, it just shows that no matter what background you have, God is actively still seeking to have fellowship with you.
Amen. Amen.
And I think that alcohol and drugs are just short-term empty pleasures that just make people feel empty and have no purpose.
That's right.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, what do you think our purpose on earth is? In Ecclesiastes, it says all is vanity, and we're just going to disappear from this earth one day. So what would you say would be our purpose as Christians?
Well, first I would say, as far as vanity, that's it's true if you're not in Christ, right? It's that, I mean, because I thought this was the only life there was and there was nothing else. So I need to get everything I can now. So I would say at this point, I believe that my purpose is to glorify God, but how I do that is by showing other people how God has changed my life, has redeemed me. I've been redeemed. That's the part. And so my purpose in life is to show other people that they're redeemable. Because I didn't feel very redeemable, but I feel redeemed now, and I want to pass that on to people because it's a really hard place to be. So the purpose is to show others what God has shown me. That's, I believe, my purpose.
Wow, that is great. And Jeremiah 29:11, God has a plan for every one of us. And I'm happy that you're living out your plan and doing his will in your life.
Oh, thank you. I'll tell you, I never really had a real life until Christ and until Jesus came into my heart. I tried to make life and it never happened. But the rub is you have to give away your life to get life. And as I've given my life away, I got a life. And I couldn't ask for a better life than I have right now.
Yeah. We must give away what our flesh wants, our flesh's passions and desires, and with the worldly ways to truly submit ourselves to the Christian life.
It's funny you say that because I'm actually going to be teaching on First Peter tomorrow. First Peter, and it talks about that, about it says here, don't slip back into your old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. You didn't know any better then.
Wow. Yeah, that's tremendous.
Yeah, it is. So I know better now. And so thing is, that now that we know this, we shouldn't waste it on living out of our flesh, because you can be a believer and saved, but you can live a carnal life. You can live a fleshly life. But you lose so much. There's so much to gain by not living out of your old desires,
Yeah. The more sins, the more you give into your fleshy desires, the more it separates you from God, because he has zero sins. But as you give in, you don't want to turn to him because it's wrong and you feel really guilty and ashamed. So it gets you farther from God.
That's right. That's one of the things that is very prevalent among people in recovery. How did you just say it? You said
the more you sin, the more you give in to your flesh's desires, the more you give in to worldly desires, the farther you distance yourself from God.
Yes. Oh, that was I going to say. You said the guilt and shame. That was it. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Most people in recovery are full of guilt and shame. And actually, I don't even think it's just people in recovery. I think all sinners have it. And it's just, I think recovery people have, I don't know. It's harder to cover that up when you're an addict and alcoholic, because it's out there for everybody to see, because you're going to jail, you're getting arrested. You're not making it to work because you're drugs, you're out of money, don't have a place to live, all those things. So it's real obvious. But when you have all those things, the house and the thing, and you don't have a drug addiction, there's other things that people don't see, right? And so as addicts and alcoholics, I think we're blessed that it does, because it's obvious, right, to everyone that there's a problem. But when you don't have that, everyone has some guilt and shame that we do a good job, or we do a lot of work at hiding. Most people.
A lot of us have secret sin, which is only kept to us, but Jesus sees everything. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So, like I said, if you have something like addicts and alcoholics, and I heard somebody say it a long time ago that he was like grateful for his addiction. I'm like, I thought, you're crazy. What are you talking about? But I understand it now, because it drove me to God. If things had worked, if I was able to manage things and not be an addict and have a house and all the things that, everybody wants, I may not have reached out to the Lord, but I reached out to him because I was desperate and full of shame and guilt, and I didn't want to live that way anymore. So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Anything else to say? Final words?
No, I don't think so. I've just, asked for prayer that as this new role as a pastor, because be quite honest with you, I don't know that any pastor really knows what they're doing. That's where the strength comes from, by admitting that we don't have what it takes, but God has what it takes if we allow him to do it through us. I would say that's the most important thing in my life, is that I need to allow God to direct everything.
Allow the Holy Spirit to talk through you and
Yeah.
speak then. Yeah,
That's
the Holy
right.
Spirit, of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and one more thing. I would recommend everyone read the Bible, because reading the Bible really gives you incentive and motivation to not want to sin. Because the more you, I have this good analogy. The more you read the Bible, the more you don't want to sin. The more you sin, the more you don't want to.
But
Read the Bible.
yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, as you know, I've been a believer for 17 years almost now, and I've just scratched the surface on the Bible. And you can read it, but I think it's also important that you kind of go deeper than just reading it, right? To actually, because you can get some tools to figure out what the original language was. Because the biggest thing is people are saying that, well, man wrote the Bible and it's has full of errors. But if you go back to the original language and really look at it deeper, you'll find stuff. It's almost like digging for gold and finding a little nugget, and when you're reading the Bible, you find a little nugget. You're like, oh my goodness, look at this. And you want to dig more, and you dig more, and you find a bigger nugget. And it never stops. And you keep reading it, you keep finding new things. And yeah, it is definitely a living organism, the Word of God. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah, amen. That should wrap it up.
All right.
Time.
Thank you very much. This was like I said, it was a big honor, Joshua, and I hope that this becomes a real blessing to you doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. See you next week.